Hello, everybody. Today I want to go over a couple things. It's not very glamorous, but it is very important to have these components in place properly prior to applying for funding. A lot of people get this wrong, and it does lead to denials and low limit approvals. So, to dive right in on the funding playbook, the LLC checklist right here, it's fairly all inclusive. I want to highlight on a few things in particular. So when you're setting up the company, it might sound kind of weird, but you want to make sure that the business name, the legal business name, is fairly, let's just say, generalized, and it's not super specific to the industry or what it is you do for business. You can always have a DBA, a doing business as a brand name. So, for example, let's just say there's a gentleman, John, and his wife is Mary, and John wants to set up a company to do, real estate investing, or wants to set up a company and he's, doing plumbing or whatever it is. For the legal business name, for example, he could put J and M for John and Mary. So J and M Enterprises LLC, or J and M, Expert, Management LLC, or whatever that may be. So just, put in the legal business name as something on the front end, some nice keyword in the middle. It could be, management, enterprises, just like we have here on the checklist. It might be consulting, it might be supplies. Again, something that's fairly general, but it's a professional name. And then John could always have, John's Professional Plumbing as his brand on, the side of his truck, and that's how people know him, John's Professional Plumbing. That could be, the name on his Google business account where people go on Google Maps, find him. So no one actually sees, J&M Enterprises LLC, except for that's what's registered with the state. And that's what goes on the application when applying for business funding. And the bank likes to see that. If they look at, John's Expert Plumbing, it literally will pin him into a corner where it's, okay, you're doing plumbing, that's all you're doing. Whereas he could literally put, on the application, if he has G&M Enterprises, LLC, he could put, hey, I'm a professional multiple trades. I do, a lot of renovation work. I help homeowners, with their needs, whether it's, on the plumbing side, but then also the restoration. So there's a lot more leeway and availability from the bank's perspective that, okay, John, he has a lot of potential to grow this company. And it also leaves John in a position where if he ever did in the future want to slightly shift, what he's actually doing for business, he can still use that same company with that same company track record. And he can switch from plumbing. Maybe he wants to go into construction. Maybe he wants to switch and he wants to go into using AI agents and providing a consulting service, because maybe in his business, he set up some pretty cool things to automate a lot of things and he wants to provide that service to businesses. He can still use that same company and there's no conflict of interest. He can always switch what the nature of the business is at any given time. And he can also set up different brands under that company. So that's a really important thing. I've seen, clients that have a very creative business name, and I'm not sure what it means. The client might know what it means, but I'm not sure what it means. The bank doesn't know what it means, and it does lead to denials and low limit approvals. So, company name, really important. Making sure that when you set up the company, you have a registered agent assigned to the company as well in the state that it's registered in. And a lot of states on the Secretary of State website, it will display the registered agent, the name, the address, and it will actually take the place of you putting your name with your home address and all that personal information on the Secretary of State website. So if somebody looks up your company, now they can see exactly where you live and personal details. It's always good to have a registered agent. Our partner, Prime Corporate Services, they do a great job. Set up the company for you A to Z. Make sure you have a good company name. It's available. Set it up in whatever state you want. Registered agent. It's like $10 a month for the registered agent. Tax write off there for you. And then also making sure that the address that's being reported is a nice commercial address. More times than not, having that registered agent will have that commercial address. You can also, go to, say, Regis, for example, and get a virtual business address. They can collect your mail. That can be, on the front lines of the public. You can put that address as your legal business address, receive all mail, correspondence, whatever it may be. And now, again, you're protecting your personal identity, and you're not putting your actual personal residence out there for everybody to see. Making sure that you get an EIN, keep that EIN letter from the IRS on hand, download it, put it in a folder, on your desktop, or put it in your Google Drive. You're going to need access to that to get business funding. The bank is going to require, EIN letter, articles of incorporation. That's when you register it with the state, and your operating agreement. Those three pieces of information, those three documents, are absolutely crucial to have. Excuse me. And on the operating agreement, that's essentially where you're breaking down the ownership of the company, the roles of each equity stakeholder. You can adjust that on the fly. So this is a really nice thing to know, right? So a lot of people, they're wondering, okay, well, I have a business partner, and let's just say I own 80% and my business partner owns 20%, and we want to get funding for the company. And maybe I'm heavily leveraging my personal credit right now for the business. So my score is low because my personal credit utilization is high. I'm not in a position to get funding. However, my business partner has great personal credit, utilization is low, and he's in a great position to get funding. He only owns 20%. So when you're going to apply, the bank is, more times than not, they're going to ask, hey, like, who in the company owns more than 25%? In this case, it would only be, myself. And I don't want to be the one on the application because I don't have a good personal credit. You can go in the operating agreement, pull it up, make your edits, temporarily swap ownership. Say you want to swap it and I'm 20%, now my business partner is 80% on paper, sign it, date it, save it. And then when you do the application, you put your business partner on the application, get the funding, get the approval. Once that's all done and the dust clears and you have the funding that you need, you can go right back in the operating agreement and swap it back to 80-20, sign it, date it. And now you have that paper trail. And if the bank is asking for proof of ownership, you can provide that document and show, hey, here's the ownership structure. Everything's dated, signed, no issues there. So pretty, seamless. It's quick and easy. Not a lot of people know it's that simple to actually swap ownership around temporarily to, get the funding. And some people, they actually will put their spouse on there if their spouse has great personal credit too, and they want to get funding. They can put their spouse on there, and so great, thing to do there. Just keep that in mind. And then also another thing on the email side. So when you're corresponding with small business relationship managers, you're inquiring about funding and you're putting in applications, having an email that's at Yahoo, at AOL, at Gmail for your company address, for your company email address, it doesn't look as professional. Even if you have, in the example with John, if you have jnmenterprises at gmail.com, I mean, it can work, right? I mean, it's an email, it can work. But if you had, John at jmenterprises.com, it looks way more professional. Obviously, you can have a website when you own your own domain. So going on, we use Squarespace. If you go on Squarespace, GoDaddy, whatever you want to use, find the domain that's available, purchase the domain, set up the Google Workspace, for your company. Now you have a legitimate company email, you own the domain. And then when you go to apply and you're presenting yourself, in a much more professional manner to the bank, those little things, they do add up. I know it sounds kind of wonky, but it does add up, and it does lead to either approvals or denials on applications. It's not like one thing will throw the whole thing off, but if you have, a company name that, doesn't make sense, if you don't have a professional business address registered with the company, if your, email is an at Gmail or at Yahoo, all those little things, they do add up. And now that does, in the eyes of the bank, lead to questioning internally of, is this a legitimate business or not? Right. So you want to position yourself, because obviously you want to create a legitimate business. You want to create, revenue, maybe hire some people, and you want to grow this thing as a legitimate company. You just want to make sure that you're presenting yourself with your best foot forward, as this is a legitimate operation, even from the very start. Even if it's a startup, you don't have any company financials, you just set up the company recently. Having all these little things knocked out as early as possible to set yourself up for success is highly recommended. And then Dun & Bradstreet, you can register and get a DUNS number. That's more so applicable for a much larger business. So you can always, it's free. You can get a DUNS number. We have a DUNS number just to get it, have it on hand down the road. If you're applying for an SBA, they're going to ask you for DUNS. If you're asking for, large business loans and lines of credit, and even, working with private lenders, they might ask you for the DUNS. Especially if you're wanting to do international business, you're going to need a DUNS number. So keep that in mind, food for thought. You can register for that, Dun & Bradstreet, dnb.com. And then also, when you're setting up the company, making sure that the NAICS code, which is essentially the code that associates your company with a specific industry, is a lower risk. So you can go onto ChatGPT, you can use, Gemini. Hey, this is what I'm doing for business. This is the nature of it. Please provide me with like the top 3 lowest risk NAICS codes, and get that code. You'll have to use that on some applications, not all, but some. They'll ask for it, or it might ask you, a series of questions of, what's the primary industry, and then it's like a sub industry, and then it's like, the third layer, like nitty gritty industry. So you just want to make sure that that code is a lower risk, because sometimes that will completely throw off the application if the bank lender, decides that, okay, well, your business is a very high risk industry. They're going to be much more conservative with the amount that they're willing to lend to you. So again, just making sure that in the eyes of the bank, you're presenting yourself as professional, low risk industry, and that you have a legitimate business established, and that leads to legitimate large amounts of funding. And also your business credit. So business credit, we partner with nav.com, great resource. Have an account there. It's kind of like Experian, but Experian is, for personal credit. So it shows your personal credit score, your personal accounts, where it's reporting, all that good stuff. On Nav, you have Experian Business, Equifax Business, your Paydex score through Dun & Bradstreet, as well as the SBFE, Small Business Financial Exchange score. And so when applying for, again, like business loans, business lines of credit, business credit cards, yes or no, those are much easier to get. Let's just say that's the easiest form of funding to get on the business side. Trying to get business loans and lines of credit, equipment loans, things of that nature. They are going to review the business credit history of your company. And so, especially if you take out an MCA, or you take out, some product like a short-term business loan that has a UCC lien attached to it, that will report to your business credit and decrease your business credit score and lead to a more difficult time trying to get funding. So hopefully this was helpful. I know it was a bit of a fire hose of information today, but wanted to break down more in depth what this LLC checklist is, how you can actually go out there and implement these different steps, why it is important, and how it actually leads to approvals or denials, whether or not you have these items on the checklist actually checked off and completed. Um, if you need any help, getting these things in order, please let us know. We'd love to be able to assist. And as always, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, feel free to leave us some feedback. If you haven't already joined our school community, please go ahead and join that in the link below. And then if you do need funding, in the next 24, 48 hours, we do have a couple partners that can help you get that done. Our process here at Rehab Reserves does typically take 2 to 4 weeks if you're ready to go from start to finish. Getting 0% business funding is not, in a day or two, time frame. It does take a little bit of time just to make sure, again, you're applying at the right location through the correct channels to get approved, and then they actually get access to the funds. And then on our end, we make sure that you're not only getting access to the funding that you need and making sure that it's the correct type of funding, we also help you, make sure that you're deploying that funding correctly as well, making sure you have a game plan to execute and be set up for success so that, down the road, you'll have the knowledge and skill set to go out there and get the funding that your business needs to continue your business, as you continue to grow. So again, I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.